welcome, guys. Thank you so much for being here. I'm very excited to have an understanding and a chat about the new app you just launched, MyMade app. And I'm really interested in understanding what's the why behind it. What is your background in the first place, and understanding why did you decided to start and doing this app for whatever reason you didn't want to do it. So tell me a little bit about you guys first.
And then... actually, why don't you start? A little background, and then we'll kind of jump in and talk about the app after that.
Yeah, fantastic. And thank you for having us on. We really appreciate this opportunity, and this is good to be able to talk and help people understand what body composition is and a little bit about what we do and what we can do, especially with our app. So really appreciate it. So yeah, our background is in exercise physiology. We're professors at the University of Alabama in the Department of Kinesiology. You mentioned the why. It's very important. The why to us is to do research and educate people, not only our students, but outside of the classroom, on how to live a healthier life, how to become fitter with exercise, and work with nutrition professionals like yourself, so that we're living in a healthier society. And to do that, we have to teach people what physical fitness is. And most people think fitness is perhaps what they see on a magazine, or they have these false misconceptions of what physical fitness is. And physical fitness is a multi-dimensional thing with body composition is our area, but aerobic fitness, muscular fitness, and so on. So so our research is to take what we do in the lab. We work with some very complicated equipment to understand, but to simplify it and put it in the hands of practitioners and people so they can evaluate their own fitness whenever, and do it in a simple manner, but also very accurate.
Okay.
Like Esko kind of mentioned, our research is in body composition. And I think, the why behind the app that we kept running into is there's this friction point with a client or a research participant and a practitioner with tracking changes accurately. We kept running into this roadblock of, a lot of times people don't even understand what they're measuring when they're, watching weight loss or when they're tracking weight loss. And so there's a misconception about what an appropriate goal is, or what we should even be trying to do. And then on the research side of things, we were running into this issue. On campus, we have one DEXA unit, and we have one underwater weighing tank, and we have, one or two bioimpedance machines, but we were bringing participants into the lab, and the scheduling was a nightmare. I mean, scheduling participants back to back to back for the entire department, across days and weeks. I mean, just the scheduling and time piece, in addition to the transportation burden on the participants, the cost burden for the equipment. We wanted to take what we do in the lab for research and make it mobile and make it portable. And I think that the app accomplishes that. And now, especially with COVID, we've really recognized that, we can continue tracking and monitoring progress in our athletes. We can continue tracking and monitoring progress in our clients for weight loss. Researchers can keep doing data collection with the app now because it's all mobile. Somebody can take a picture from their phone, and send it to their personal trainer, or send it to their dietitian, or send it to their coach. And so they can be measuring and monitoring progress remotely from across the country. And so we're eventually, our goal is to move everything that we do in the exercise physiology lab into the phone, because, the computer, the processing systems that we have on the phone are more advanced than some of the technology we have, that's built and kind of stationary in the lab.
That's amazing. I think it is a very powerful why, I would say, because it was born from the idea of wanting to facilitate your research and speed up the process and make it just more available for all your participants within your research, and just make things easier. And I guess it became more useful now that we had to do everything online from the COVID. And it couldn't have happened if you had to see each person, single person all the time, or very frequently. So I guess that really might have helped at that point. Yeah. Do you find that it really helped you just keep doing your research, or you found that you had to stop at some point this year?
Well, so actually that brings up a really interesting point, is that, the app has actually, our research has kind of exploded, because now even though we haven't been able to go into the lab and do in-person data collection since March, we've still managed to be really productive with the research. The data that we had collected up until our lab shut down because of COVID, we have research validating the app that's being published now. And then when a user downloads the app to their phone, they have the option of consenting to allow us to use their data for research. And so we don't use the images, but we do take their age and their gender and their race, and then we take their height and weight and body composition data. And so we get to use that, if they allow us to, for research purposes also. And our goal there is to show, the disconnect between somebody's body mass index and their actual composition, and how that relationship changes kind of as you age, as part of the normal aging process, how physical activity changes that relationship, and different race and ethnic, kind of characteristics. And so it's actually opened up a lot of research opportunities for us to collaborate, with different types of monitoring systems and different researchers at other universities that are also doing things remotely. So it's pretty cool time, actually.
Yeah. And it coincides with, the difficulty centered around beginning an exercise program or beginning a healthy lifestyle. That's already difficult enough for most people. And then within COVID makes it even more of a challenge. But, there are ways to get things done. And with our research, same with being able to contribute to simplifying the process of living a healthy lifestyle and monitoring progress.
Let me ask you something. When you talk about body composition, obviously there is we always have different concepts and understanding about what it is. When you refer to body composition, what do you mean by that, and what are the different methods that you have come across that help assessing body composition, and how it differs to maybe the app you have built?
What body composition is simple, is the ratio of fat-free mass to fat mass, or really all the tissues, a relative proportion of all the tissues that make up the body.
Okay.
The ways that we do it in the lab, that we use to kind of validate and develop, the app, we have DEXA, which uses different frequencies of X-rays to measure body composition, so muscle, bone, and fat. We have underwater weighing and the bod pod, which I think the egg that a lot of people are familiar with, where that's based off of fluid displacement. So how much water your body takes up when you're dunked under, in the underwater weighing tank, or how much air your body displaces when you're put in the bod pod. And then ESCOs, both of our kind of areas of research as of late have been in bioimpedance. So electrical currents that kind of pass through the body and through the different tissues, and measuring fluid and fat-free mass and fat mass, based on how much resistance those currents get as they travel through the tissues. So those are some of the techniques that we use in the lab. Skin folds, I think a lot of practitioners are familiar with, when we take the calipers and measure the thickness of the actual skin fold for measuring composition in field settings. Most coaches are kind of familiar with that. So, if you kind of compare the app to, all of those different lab-based methods and field-based methods, I think we're really well positioned. We're for sure the most accurate field-based method, I think, that's out there. And then we compare really, really well to some of the research methods, the DEXA and the underwater weighing and the bod pod. And I think, where we kind of see the app existing, we don't necessarily see it ever replacing the DEXA, to measure body composition in a lab or a research setting, because the values that we get from the DEXA are so important. I mean, to get a measure of bone health, especially in older adults, that's incredibly valuable. To get a measure of bone health in younger athletes, we were talking about like the female athlete triad and low bone mass and things like that. There are definitely clinical reasons why you would want to take a DEXA scan to measure body composition and bone health. But I think, where we kind of see ourselves is, a lot of practitioners can't measure body composition in their clients or athletes with a DEXA a couple times a year, maybe at most. But with the app, we can measure progress weekly if we need to. I mean, you guys could have 50 some odd measurements a year on an athlete, and that's a lot of data points to track longitudinally over time. And I think the increased access, just the availability of information that you would get from being able to monitor that closely and check in that frequently with people is incredibly valuable, and puts us kind of in a position to not replace what's already out there for research, but definitely add to it, because we can more frequently check in.
One thing to add to that as well is body mass index is the most common measure of body composition, and that's a simple height to weight ratio. That's not an accurate measure of body fat percentage, and most people sometimes think that does give you a measure of body fat percentage. It's BMI is simple. You just need a scale and a way to measure height, and then to calculate the equation. But our method is probably even more simple than that. It's just a picture, and much more accurate than BMI, and like Dr. Fita would mention, more accurate than some of the techniques that are commonly used in lab or gym settings, for sure.
Following what you just mentioned, BMI, I guess it is very useful for certain research purposes, especially when you're talking about a large amount of people, that you can get or grasp the idea of what is the category of body mass that you treating or working with. Obviously, it doesn't really give you an insight of individual data of talking about someone specifically, where you might have a very simple, it's like a screening tool that might give you some ideas, but it's obviously not the whole picture, and it doesn't give you the difference between body fat and lean body mass, or how much muscle mass you might have. And it can be a little bit misleading when we assess a client without knowing them or without seeing them, and just take conclusions just from the BMI, saying, well, this person is obese, but perhaps when you see them, they are all ripped and huge in muscles, and that's why they're so heavy. So it is very interesting and important to correlate and use, if someone uses BMI, really to bring the context to it. Obviously, we have a way to assess body composition. To have more of that context is going to be much more beneficial. So I guess this really fits well with the app, because it just sort of comes nicely to, well, you could have your BMI, but also if you're working with clients, I do work with a lot of clients that maybe they are not able to go or afford a DEXA scan or have a skin fold measurement. Maybe where they located, there's no availability for it, or they have to have an appointment to actually get to it. So I think that it makes it really handy to have something just in your phone and go wherever you go and just get your pictures and get the information. So leading into this, the app aims to accurately assess body composition, right? Using just 2D digital imaging, total body image taken on a smartphone or a tablet. How is actually this possible? How is it done?
Yeah, actually, we have people ask that a lot, and the app actually works in a very similar way that underwater weighing does, in a very similar way to BOD-POD, where the underwater weighing is measuring the amount of water that you're displacing, or how big of a space you take up in the pool. The BOD-POD is measuring how much air you displace in the tank. The app takes a picture, and it in a sense measures how many pixels you take up. So instead of water displacement or air displacement, we're kind of using pixel displacement. So we take a single body image from the top of the head to the bottom of your feet, and once we've identified the person in the image, we can filter out the background, and so we just have the person's outline, and from there we just take diameter measurements all across the body. So at different landmarks, we just measure the distance across and figure out how wide the person is. And we have their height and now their width, and all of these different diameter measurements. We're actually measuring volume, or how much space the person takes up in the image. And then from that, the same way that we would take a volume measure from the underwater weighing tank or from BOD-POD, we convert that to density, and then eventually we can take that and convert that to body fat percentage and fat mass and fat-free mass. But the approach is very similar, and that's actually where we get the strongest correlation, is when we look at underwater weighing and the app, we correlate, and that correlation is about 0.998, 0.999. So we can measure volume or size with about 99.8% accuracy, which is really, really good. And that allows us to take our app and use it in like a research setting. We can replace underwater weighing and use the app instead in a multi-compartment model for body composition measure, and not lose any accuracy, but we can speed up, the amount of time that it takes to collect those data. So it's kind of how it works. We also ask the participants or the users when they create their profile, age, sex, and race and ethnicity. And the reason we do that, we know from other research that there's this age-related trend in muscle mass. Whereas you get older, we tend to lose a little bit of muscle. And then as we get older, then for the same weight, we might add a little bit of extra body fat. As we ask the users when they create their profile to tell us kind of when their birthday is, so we can also account for those age-related trends. And then we ask male or female because we know kind of the average man and the average woman are very different in how much muscle they have, how much body fat they have, and then where they're storing those kind of the regional distribution of body fat. So we also want to account for those potential differences. And so with that, kind of comparing it to underwater weighing and then also factoring in their age and some of the other pieces that we look at, we can get a really accurate measure of composition.
Does that account for like circumstantial problems? For example, someone who might have been retaining more fluid one day and they took the picture, and maybe that day they're a little bit more bloated, like they probably physically looking a little bit wider, like if you take in the diameters, but it doesn't mean like they actually have more fat mass. Or like if someone is like a woman is in her menstrual cycle and she's bloated, or someone suffers from IBS and that day they decided to take the picture and they have like a huge belly. What does that account for that? Or how would you manage to account for those things?
Yeah, so the changes that we get because of menstrual cycle are usually, they're relatively small and they're acute. And like you said, it's mostly fluid retention and water weight. So when we take a scan, we have each user update their scale weight. So they step on a scale, they tell us how much they weigh. And so we can adjust for those day-to-day changes or those week-to-week changes. And a lot of those acute kind of fluctuations that we see in body weight are captured and actually show up with the app as fat-free mass. Okay. We just had Thanksgiving here in the States, and all of us, the co-founders, were measuring with the app on Thanksgiving and the day after, because everyone in the States was eating so much food. We wanted to make sure that what was being captured in the app was showing up as fat-free mass. And we had about 90 to 95% of the changes on the scale that we were seeing were being accurately captured as water weight and fluid retention with the app, which was pretty cool. So a lot of people here were freaking out and they were like, oh my gosh, be careful what you eat on Thanksgiving because you're going to gain all this body fat in 2 days. And we were really excited to see that with a picture on the app, those changes were showing up as water, which is exactly what we expected. And then a few days later, everybody's weight came back down to kind of where they started with no change in body fat. So we were really excited about that. We can very sensitively capture the acute changes in fluid retention, and that shows up mostly as water weight and fat-free mass in the app.
That's awesome.
Yeah, we're pretty excited. Yeah,
that's why it's not the best idea to weigh frequently without adding something else in to really explain what those weight changes are. Because if we see an increase of 3 pounds on the scale on one day, well, a lot of people will panic over that and they think that they're gaining fat. Well, that's not the case. So
yeah, it can be very frustrating, especially for people who actually don't weigh frequently. They just weigh once a week or twice a week. So if you have only one point of data from one weekend to the other, and probably all the rest of the weighs, even if you didn't have them, they went pretty stable and down, but for some reason, the day you actually go and weigh yourself is up, then it is very frustrating to say, well, I have no changes. I have no progress. So I think it is useful if you don't have a way to measure your body composition to track your weight more regularly, so you can see the trends and have more data points where you can compare how the trends are going rather than just one point one measurement one weekend to another weekend, because it can miss a lot of data in between. So
Absolutely.
it definitely helps being able to, well, I can't wait anytime if I do twice a week, but I have more data in terms of my body composition. Like if I take my picture Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and I only did 2 weigh-ins, that doesn't matter, but because I have more context on what my progress looks like in terms of body composition as well.
Yeah, you really hit on a beautiful thing. Like, we know that weight loss is not linear. And so we don't just expect, like, as we start exercising and, you know, start eating a little bit healthier, that our weight is just going to go down in a straight line. We know that there's going to be up days and down days, and there will be fluctuations. And we even see changes in weight within a day. I mean, our weight can fluctuate a few pounds or a few kilograms from morning to afternoon to evening. And so it's actually a really cool thing to use the app and actually, like you said, put context around this, so we know the change is not going to be linear. There will be ups and downs, but even those small changes in weight on the scale are, you know, they're not completely changes in body fat. And so if the scale goes up, it's not all fat. And if the scale drops, it's not all fat either. There's going to be kind of nuances with that too. So I think that's absolutely true.
It depends on so many factors, like your body water. It depends on your digestive contents. When was the last time you ate? If you're well hydrated, menstrual cycle, hormones. There's a lot into it that people don't account for every time they weigh in. They just look at the number, it's fat, or I got progress. So either one way or the other, but they don't put it context to it. So this leads really well into our next question, which is, how does this method compares in terms of accuracy with DEXA or BIA or anthropometric measurements?
Yeah, so compared to lab measures, our error range, our standard error, the estimate, is just over 3%. So compared to DEXA or compared to the multi-compartment model is what we really validate our method against. So that range of error is much less than some of the other field techniques like skin folds or bioimpedance. So we are as accurate or more accurate than the common field methods with measuring body fat percentage. We're working on a paper right now in D1 athletes comparing our method against DEXA, and we're seeing excellent agreement with DEXA. So we are confident that our device, like what Fidwa said earlier, that can be used in conjunction with DEXA to evaluate changes in athletes. We recently had a paper accepted in Medicine and Science and Sports and Exercise that further validated the body volume assessment compared to underwater weigh-in. And we showed, like you mentioned before, like, you know, a 0.99 relationship, which is nearly perfect, about as perfect as you can possibly be. So our method is incredibly accurate. You know, and the advantage is that it's also incredibly simple.
When it comes to accuracy, consistency, and reliability, do you recommend to follow certain protocols when people are taking the pictures, the backgrounds, something to ensure everything stays relatively the same every time the person uses the app?
When we use the app, so in a research setting, like we're kind of concerned about two things. We want to make sure that the measurement that we're taking is reliable. So we need to make sure that it's consistent every single time we take a picture with the app, that the app itself is analyzing it exactly the same way. And so when you guys download the app, it's if you take the same image and run the same image through the app 2 times, it actually comes out exactly the same. Like the retest reliability of the same image is absolutely perfect. So you can scan the same image and it identifies the exact same points every single time. So we were really excited about that. What we did in the lab for research, we had the participants get into the same position. So the MyMade position that we use is feet together, arms out, kind of away from your side, so that we can identify the landmarks we need on the trunk or the midsection. We took one picture, had the person step away from the screen or out of the image of the iPad, and then step back in and try to get into the same exact position. So we could kind of simulate what would happen if we were to take like a scan today and then a scan either in the afternoon or a scan like, you know, later on. If they try to recreate that same pose, how consistent are we? We were off by about 1/100th of a liter when we tried to estimate body volume. So again, the correlation is it's two different poses, it's two different images, but the position itself, the algorithm that the computer uses or the smartphone uses, analyzes it with almost perfect consistency there too. So the test retest, but two different images of the same person was about 0.999 also. So we measured the liter with about a tenth of a
What
liter
about
difference.
the background? Do you need like a white background? If you have a lot of stuff around you, does that become that bit confusing?
That could be the only thing that could really interfere with our accuracy is if there's too much noise in the background or the body position is not correct. Then that could potentially interfere with our analysis. But our analysis the process is very good in terms of filtering a lot of some of the noise out. But we still like to be on the safe side. You know, no couches behind, no other people or whatnot behind the person. As clean as possible with the background wall is best. And then making sure that the person is in anatomical position. That is arms out from the body, you know, standing straight, the full entire body is within the image, feet are together, and wearing the appropriate clothing. Snugly fit, you know, snug fitting clothes, compression shorts, compression t-shirt is best. In the lab, we have guys go shirtless, but they don't have to. They can wear something that fits to their body as long as the image analysis process can pick the major landmarks that we have within the algorithm.
Kind of tell folks like, can the app filter out your background? Yeah, it can. We've run simulated images where we take somebody standing in front of like a jungle background, or we take somebody like walking through a park and try to figure out like, can it find the person in this image? Yes, it can. But if you're really using it to measure changes in your body composition, you want to get the most accurate and consistent conditions that the pictures are taken in. So yeah, we would recommend taking it in front of a plain wall if you can find one with good lighting, and then try to make sure that the clothing that you're wearing is kind of form-fitting and snug to the body. Anything that's going to make your figure look different. And so like if you have a baggy shirt on that's kind of loose fitting and hanging away from the midsection, we can't find the narrowest and widest points and all the other landmarks that we need. So that's going to introduce some error. You mentioned consistency. I think same background, same lighting, if you can even wear the same clothing, you know, if we're kind of tracking over time, that would absolutely give you the best, most reliable, most accurate measures.
Do you need someone to take the picture, or can the app take it on its own, like a hands-free? Do you just put a timer, something like that?
Yeah, what we recommend actually is the app doesn't save the images. And so when you upload the image to be analyzed, it goes away. It's not stored anywhere. We actually don't see the image. So what we recommend people do for their own records is take the picture on your phone and just save it to your camera roll, or save it on your phone. That way you have it to go back to if there's any kind of like glitch and your phone can't connect to the server, you know, the image you still have, and so you can just re-upload it again. That also kind of helps you go back over time and just kind of visually see the changes that you've had. We recommend doing that. So in that case, you just take it by yourself, turn your camera on your smartphone, turn it into selfie mode, and then set a timer, and then just kind of step back. There's not a set height that we need the camera to be at. We just recommend that it's at waist level, and that we can see the entire person within the screen. So top of the head and the bottom of their feet. And other than that, I mean, it's pretty much it. In the lab, we have a tripod set up, but at home, I use a coffee table and a coffee mug, and I just set my phone up against the coffee mug, and it's the same height, and I use the same wall every time, and so my measurements are consistent, kind of across days and across weeks, and it works completely fine.
Okay, got it. Now, do you feel, or do you envision that this could be a game changer for body composition assessment in the future, or even right now? And in which population do you think it might be even more useful?
Yeah, I mean, we feel like it could revolutionize the way in which body composition is assessed, and therefore revolutionize the fitness and nutrition industries. Yeah, I mean, game changer. It's the simplest method of measuring body composition, and no one needs to go to a trained professional to have it done. They can do it themselves. So for that, there's nothing else out there that's like it, and it can be done virtually. So who it could benefit is anyone who's really interested in measuring their body composition. So the shift towards virtual instruction and virtual coaching in today's times, athletes that are training remotely and coaches having the ability to track their changes in body composition across time. Personal trainers that work with clients remotely have now the ability to monitor their progress. There's a large majority of people that have that are, quite frankly, intimidated, and I don't blame them, to walk into a fitness center or a exercise phys lab and have some other trained professional who appears to be fit and they may not be, and there's a fear associated with that. Well, that's no longer necessary. They can do it on their own, right? So anyone who is beginning an approach towards a healthier lifestyle to lose weight and gain an appropriate body composition for themselves, well, this is going to benefit them.
Okay, a special population, for example, or elderly, or very, very obese, or someone who has anorexia nervosa, very, very skinny, someone who has like a pregnant woman. Can a pregnant woman could track the progress even being pregnant? Would that make any changes? And like kids, would they be would they benefit or fit within the same app?
Yes.
Run me through this.
Actually, that's a great question. So let's unpack that. The app can't figure out where the mom starts and the baby starts. So in the disclaimers, we make sure that we recommend and say, look, this is for general population. We've got the research data to back it up. We've tracked and validated in power lifters and weight loss trials and CrossFit and the general population, but we can't do moms yet. So we would recommend, honestly, at that point, you're going to be working really closely during the entire pregnancy with your primary care physician. Like, they're going to be monitoring mom's health and baby's health and appropriate weight change with the app. And with most methods, there's not a really accurate way to measure what is mom and what is baby. So we would not recommend it. We would not recommend that mom does this, but we would recommend, as soon as baby's out and mom is feeling up for it and she's ready to go, if you are starting a workout program again and you're gonna get back at it once you're fully recovered and you feel like you're ready to go, then you will bring us along on the fitness journey. We want to be a part of it. So absolutely on that part. The other part that I want to just absolutely touch on with kids, I think we were very careful when we were kind of brainstorming and mapping out the app. We didn't want this to be a tool that was used to shame or like embarrass or be used in any kind of a negative way with kids or adolescents, because we recognized that was a really fragile time. Like, just the transition from childhood to adolescence and the normal shifts and changes that we see in body composition. We wanted to walk away from that too. The other thing that I think is really important, especially when we're dealing with kids and youth athletes, is that the most important indicator that you can possibly go on is performance. And so if you're working with youth athletes, we're not going to recommend weight loss. I'm not even necessarily going to recommend like doing a ton of resistance training and trying to build a ton of muscle. I'm really concerned about performance on the court or on the field. And so if you want to measure changes, those are going to be the measures that we really want to look at. So hook up with a coach who knows what they're doing, that's really out here trying to maximize speed and agility and proper fundamentals, and really worried about coaching the entire athlete, not shooting for body composition goals. So those two, I think that we wanted to be a little bit careful with how we approach those two groups. You said older adults. Absolutely. I think now, especially with COVID, like we've seen the groups that want access to online coaching, that are interested in personal training or a fitness program, but don't want to go into a gym right now because they're at a higher risk. This is great for them. They can train at home. They can get their exercise programs at home. They can meet with their trainers virtually. They can track their progress virtually too with this. And so I think that absolutely older adults can use this to track their changes. The one drawback is that we can't measure bone health. So again,
Yeah.
since we're not trying to replace DEXA, absolutely still working with your primary care physicians and making sure that you're going in for osteoporosis screenings and regular kind of bone health checkups. But for the general population, overweight, obese, weight loss interventions, absolutely. Yeah, that's actually where most of my background in research has been, comorbidities with obesity and kind of how it's related to metabolic health and high cholesterol and diabetes and, adverse kind of health consequences, how exercise can be used for weight loss. And so I think, yeah, we absolutely see a home there.
You mentioned eating disorders and body image disorders. So, if a clinical condition, a clinical body image disorder or eating disorder, where there's a drive for thinness or drive for muscularity with like muscle dysmorphia or something like that. Personally, I would not recommend someone like that using a device like ours outside of being supervised by a clinician.
Sounds great.
Yeah,
Yes.
we really wanted, Esco and I have kind of talked about this, where we see the app fitting. And I think where we see it fitting is to be a measurement tool. And so like when a user downloads the app, the first thing they notice is that okay, we have the body composition stuff here, but then where's my diet tracker? Or like, where's my workout plan? Like, how come we're not delivering those two pieces also? And we really wanted to stay in our own lane. Like we wanted to measure body composition, and you're a dietitian. We wanted to make sure that if somebody is using the app for weight loss, or if they're, if they have an eating disorder and they have a clinician that they're meeting with, that they're meeting with their clinician and they're not going to the app for advice or for guidance or for a meal plan or, for exercise advice. We have believed in what we tell our students is that exercise and your prescription and your meal plan and your medications, those are all supposed to be individualized, and you're trained and you're a professional. And we want our users, if they're going down that road, to get help and to get assistance from trained professionals that can kind of guide them on their journey. And while they're on their journey, meeting with their trainers and meeting with their dietitians and the other clinicians that are on their treatment team, use the app to help. And I think no one, from a clinician and a practitioner side of things, I think no one would discourage collecting more data if it can be done in a healthy way, right? More information will never hurt if it can be done appropriately. So I think that's kind of where we see ourselves fitting in. We never wanted to give dietary advice or exercise, prescriptions through the app. We want this to be used as a tool by practitioners in addition to what they're already doing as part of the awesome, kind of treatment and programming that they're delivering.
That's amazing. Now, let's say someone sign up, or let's say I am a new user. Take me through the process once I download the app. How often should I check in? What should I do with it? How do I use it?
Yeah. So when you download the app, the first thing you do is create your profile. So we have you put in your age, your gender. We have you put in your race and ethnicity. We have you do your height and your weight also. The height allows us to scale the image measurements directly to you. So we can measure somebody who is, 7 feet tall on the basketball team, or, who's 5'4" and who's on the gymnastics or on the soccer team. So we can scale that image of the person's size to kind of align with their actual height. So if somebody tells us I'm 7 feet tall, we know that this many pixels in the image is 7 feet. We ask for their weight because as we're estimating body fat percentage, we then want to go back and calculate, if 17% of you is fat in kilograms, how much does that actually translate to? So if I say I'm, if I'm 110 kilograms and I'm 17% fat, what does that actually come out to? So we ask for weight, and we actually ask for weight every time a person comes in to do another measurement. So they'll update that every time they take a scan. You asked how often to measure. That's actually, I'll let Esko kind of jump in here too. You mentioned more data points. How often should I be tracking and catching those ups and downs? If we're using this to measure trends, the more data points that you can track, absolutely the better, right? So if I'm using this, if I'm tracking my weight once a week, awesome. You use it once a week to not only track weight loss, but track changes in composition also. If I'm weighing in every day, cool, that's also fine. We're not necessarily recommending that, but that does put context around those really acute changes in the scale, right? So if I'm gaining a pound or losing a pound, is that fat or muscle, and how is that actually changing? So,
our users are free to measure as much as they want to measure, right? I mean, or as little as they want, but the key is what they do with that, right? So some people are obsessive with weighing every day or multiple times throughout the day, like we talked about earlier. And that can become discouraging when they see results, even if it's small results that don't go in their favor. But they can't make ultimate decisions based upon the acute changes that they will see from the multiple measures that they would take. So, main thing is that we encourage our users to be patient if they're striving for a healthier body composition, and don't make the judgment of whether or not they're successful or not on their multiple measures that they may take. So
Okay.
this tool is mobile and great, and it will allow people to take measures whenever, and that's wonderful. But there's also a potential consequence that comes with that, with an individual reading too much into an acute measure that may show a slight increase in their percentage.
Obsessing about it.
Yeah.
Right.
So I mean, like if we're doing a weight loss trial, we would say for research, we're going to go for at least 8 weeks to be like a true, like actually capture like significant true changes in composition. If for a research setting, we would say that at least 2 months, right? And so I think if you're measuring every day, it's okay to see those changes and go, oh man, like the scale went up, or oh man, watch, look, my fat-free mass dropped by a little bit. And that's okay to say, but then to zoom out and say, okay, but over the course of 8 weeks, how much is that tiny change up and down really actually worth? That is important to remember, that we have to put context around it. And for New Year's, like we have these big New Year's resolutions, and everybody says, I'm going to get so healthy next year, and I'm going to lose this weight, and I'm going to start tracking and measuring. Awesome. Like, absolutely go for it. But then remember, there's 365 days, and we're talking about weeks and weeks over months. And so again, to put context around it, if you're tracking every day, totally fine. But then remember, we're going to zoom out, and we're looking for these long changes that are going to take time to happen, and we're spreading it out over a year. And I think that helps to put some context around it, is that there will be a lot of small fluctuations, and sometimes we got to zoom out and take it for the big picture for what it's worth.
That's great. Now I have a follow-up question, and this is about someone who is like has had a body composition test before, like they had a DEXA scan or bioimpedance or something like that, or anthropometric measurements, and they get told they have X amount of body fat percentage. If they move into the app and they see their new measurement and it's completely different, how do we explain or how do we extrapolate the data that they had previously to this one, so they don't sort of freak out, oh, now I became obese, or on the other way around? Like,
yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Esko, you want to start? I'm going to tell a story, so go ahead.
Yeah, well, it's important when evaluating progress that whatever tool is used, that tool is consistent, that it's the same tool each time. Like if I'm going to do a skin fold assessment, and I'm going to do a baseline measure, and I want to evaluate my progress 8 weeks later, well, the best tool to use would be a skin fold assessment, to make sure that those would agree it's the same tool, because there are some discrepancies between all body composition methods. If I do a DEXA scan, I'm not going to get the same as I would do with an underwater weighing scan. There would be some slight differences there. So those using multiple measures could show changes, but it won't perhaps be as precise as if the same device was used multiple at each time point. So, we would recommend just using our device.
Yeah, I think,
there's no reason not to. Yep.
Yeah, I think, when we compare across, right? So we have these like research grade, really advanced multi-compartment models that combine different devices and techniques of tracking. And that's great. If you have the budget and have a DEXA and an underwater weighing tank and, doubly labeled water, I mean, that's fantastic. If you have access to all that, more power to you. But if you don't, you got to understand, like, each one of these tools is imperfect in its own way. It's using one technique to try to measure what you're made of, and each of them, underwater weighing and DEXA and bioimpedance and the app, are all trying to measure you in a little bit different way with a little bit different technique, and all of their numbers are going to come out to be about the same. Even when we compare across methods, like Esko said, there's not perfect agreement between any of them. And if we compare a single measure to the more advanced research methods that we have access to in our lab, none of them are perfect. There's flaws with all of them. So I think if you scan with the app and you get a different result than what your DEXA scan says, that can happen. When the story I was going to say, when I was in undergrad, when I was in college, we had a DEXA scan and an underwater weighing machine. And I remember like doing underwater weighing and coming in at 9. And I was like, boom, right there. That is fantastic. Then I got on the DEXA and it got me at 19%. And I said, well, I'm never stepping on a DEXA again, right? Because I saw like a 10% difference between underwater weighing and DEXA. And I didn't know which one was right. I just knew that they were different. So I stuck with underwater weighing and used that from then on, because at least I could track that more frequently and see changes within that one unit. So I would recommend, if you're going to use the app, go for it. Check in frequently and do those measurements routinely as part of kind of your workout and your eating, your meal plan. With a DEXA, how often can you get in to do a DEXA scan? In Alabama, we're limited. We may only be able to get in once, maybe twice a year for research purposes, depending on the study and the special approval that we have to because of the radiation. And if you're doing underwater weighing, same deal. Like, how often can I get in to do an underwater weighing measurement? How often can I afford to go and do a bioimpedance test? If I'm signing up to do it at the gym and it's $30 a pop, $30 a measurement, like how frequently can I go in and do that before I break the bank? The app allows you to measure more consistently. So whether it's with us or with another method, like Esko said, pick the same tool and use that to track progress over time, to make sure that the method is being consistent to track changes more sensitively.
Yeah, you could use our device in conjunction with a DEXA or some of the more sophisticated measures. You just have to understand that there could be changes. There could show the changes that we may be able to track, and the difference between measures that change could be very similar, but the actual measures may be a little different. So in other words, if I'm have to do a DEXA scan in 3 months and I'm doing the MyMade smartphone scans every week, well, that will show me early on whether or not there are changes in my body composition, and I won't have to wait 3 months down the road to show with another DEXA scan what the actual changes were.
Yeah, that makes absolute sense.
Yeah, exactly. Right. So
now, pros and cons. Are there any pros, any cons about the app?
Yeah, I mean, the pros we've covered a lot during this discussion, but
Cons?
there absolutely are. And we summarize the pros first. I like this. I like to focus on the positive. So we know that we're accurate, right? We're the developers of it, but we're also the researchers. So we are consistently working towards the research and developing our process to where our standard of the error, like I said before, around 3%. Well, we see no reason why that one day could be much smaller than that, where we can even be more accurate. So yes, it's accurate. It's as accurate or more accurate than the available field methods. It's convenient. It's the most convenient method there is. It's right in the palm of someone's hand. It's in the smartphone. So all that's required is a picture, the ability to take a picture and in the appropriate environment. So it's less expensive, far less expensive than any of the other techniques that are available. And it can be useful for distance, for remote coaching and remote training. And it can scan multiple people in a row, so it can be used for a large group, like an athletic team.
So can you use the same device for different people?
Yes. So we have a new version out. This the first version that we released was for individual users. So a person would download it, go to the App Store, the Google Play Store, and download it to their personal device, and then program their descriptive variables, their height, their weight, their age, etc. And then that is locked to that individual, where they can actually scan multiple people. So that's the individual version, and we've just recently released, or we're working towards release. We have the beta testing that we're doing internally right now. It's a coaching version, and with that, a coach or a trainer or a supervisor in a corporation could download that to one device and then change the description for anybody and scan as many people as they want to scan with it. So we actually have two versions. So like with the coaching platform, an athlete can come in, put their information in, take the picture, next, as long as the lighting is right and the clothing is appropriate and they're in the right position, each time. Which brings me to the cons, but that's the cons that we see is if we're leaving it up to the users to do it appropriately. So we've had a couple of users that have already communicated with us that they were having issues, and when we're discussing going back and forth with them, we realized that they're not taking the picture appropriately. Their whole body isn't in the image, or they're not wearing the right clothes, or they're not within the right position. So a user must follow the instructions that we provide within the app before taking the image. Appropriate lighting, appropriate clothing, body position.
Yeah, I think the other cons that we have compared to the other techniques, I mean, every technique has limitations. And so, if we compare to DEXA, like we said, we're not trying to replace DEXA, because DEXA has really important kind of a clinical place for bone health. We can't measure bone health, but neither can skin folds, underwater weighing, or bod pod. And so I think those limitations aren't necessarily with the app itself. It's just the technique that it's using to measure body composition. And those other methods are also limited kind of in that same sense. What ESCO is kind of getting at is you can trick the app, right? So you can say that your weight has changed when it actually hasn't. And so, you're uploading your own information, you're uploading your image, you're changing your weight, because you get to update your weight every time you take a scan. Can it be manipulated or kind of changed in a way to show that there's been improvements in body composition when there actually hasn't? Yeah, you can manipulate the app. You can trick it for sure to show changes when they're not actually there. But in a sense, like the tool for what it can do when it's used appropriately, when you use it the way that kind of the instructions are laid out, and when you honestly use it to track changes or to measure composition, it can do exactly what it's claiming to do. But again, since it's in the user's hands, you can tweak it and mess with it to get it to show numbers that may not be as accurate as they should be.
Well, do you tell the people to do the right thing then?
Yeah, we tried, and it's actually, it's been really interesting. When we set up the instructions on how to take a scan, we thought that we had explained them so clearly. I mean, on-screen prompting, we had instructions there. We have a few videos that are on our social media. So just to kind of outline people, examples of bad images and examples of good images when you're taking a scan, trying to just get people to understand, like, this is kind of how you should be positioned, and this is how, you shouldn't. It's really made us think back. Like if we have a user that's taking a scan and it's giving out inaccurate information, how did we mess up as a developer or as the researcher? Like, where did we go wrong with the instructions that weren't clear enough for the user, right? So that's actually been, we've been working on this project for a few years now. And so we've seen the app grow from just an idea into this, you know, this functioning kind of publicly available system. And so we've seen it so many times, we forget that, you know, for somebody just downloading it from the App Store, this is the first time they've ever seen that screen. And so it's really made us kind of go back and reevaluate how we prompt the users and the feedback we give the users. This is just the first or second version that's kind of been live in the app stores, but we have plans for the third, fourth, fifth, sixth, you know, version down the road on how we can improve the user experience to make sure that that image is captured as accurately as possible so that the user gets the data that they want.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. So users, right? I mean, that are out there, your followers and your listeners and your viewers, anyone who downloads the app, and if there's feedback for us, send it our way. We would love to hear from you. I mean, we are researchers, and we consider any feedback that we get research.
100%.
Our whole method is to make this as accurate and as useful as possible. So we definitely appreciate the feedback from our users. Completely
agree. And I think this brings up to the closure of our video and our conversation. Thank you so much, guys, for coming up to my mini podcast or my mini video series. So this is going to be released very soon, and I am looking forward to share all this with my followers and everyone who's watching this. Make sure you guys sign up to MyMade app to really get your body composition much easier and much cheaper as well, much more affordable. And you can use my code. All right, no worries. Well, guys, have a great night, and I'll see you very soon.
Thank you very much. We appreciate the opportunity.
No worries. See ya.